do you see that the market will continue towards whatever direction it's going? I mean, the hybrids, the electric cars, the all electrics, and then the internal combustion engines. I mean, it was funny. I was looking at a GMC Denali on a lot the other day, and it was a 2024 top of the line, and it had 3.0 liter V6. And at first I went, oh, well, I wouldn't want one with a 3-liter V6. And then I thought, well, maybe if I drove it, I would have a different opinion. And I think, but seeing the direction that these cars are going with smaller engines and more efficient engines and the hybrid, is the hybrid version make more sense to you than all electric, or what are your thoughts on that?
It's interesting. When I was at GM, there was a chart that showed the cost of a battery propulsion unit versus internal combustion. Of course, in all fairness, this was looking at going to probably more aggressive fuel standards than we'll have under the Trump administration. But those lines crossed. And I think that's, GM has said, I don't know if they're still saying that, but saying that basically they'll be variable profit positive on EVs. And a lot of that is driven by volume. And we're like, this is like the semiconductor business. There's sort of a Moore's law effect that things get cheaper with more volume and more innovation. And I think that the 7,500 credit has certainly been a stimulus to people buying EVs, and that's going to almost certainly go away in January 20th.
Sure.
But I think there's momentum behind the EV market. And so I think there will be continued growth in full electric vehicles as they get more efficient. And I think I told you I'm driving an Equinox EV right now, 300 more or less miles of range. I love it. It's great. I can charge it at home. Would I want to drive it to Detroit? The non-Tesla network is still shaky. And so I think until that gets built out and then the range goes up to 400, which is the next big thing. If you get a Tesla now, I think 385 range. So at a certain point, it's going to be like when laptops like the Apple computers we have now that have 14 hours of battery life. You don't think about it anymore. So, or 5 megabytes was the hard drive size on the first laptop that I got. So, but the dilemma for the OEMs is that if you have a hybrid, you're especially a plug-in hybrid, you're paying for 2 propulsion systems. You've got 2 parallel systems, which adds to the cost. So I think there's going to continue to be this sort of debate going on in the public. I have a lot of friends asking me about plug-in hybrids. And these days they have a range of 30 to 40 miles, which is probably good enough for most people.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I mean, if I look at things in an honest opinion of myself, I'm a perfect candidate. I drive, our bank and everything is 2 miles from here. We don't ever go more than 2 or 3 miles in a day. I mean, it would be make perfect sense if it made perfect sense all the way around. Is it more efficient? Is it better for our environment? Internal combustion engine versus a hybrid or a hybrid version or an all electric. I mean, I know that I could put a brand new Corvette in my office and turn it on and run it, and you wouldn't be smoked out within like 2 minutes. So you could be on any car from the 50s, 60s, or 70s.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that there's still enthusiasts like us who want that feeling of much as I enjoy the seamless acceleration of the Equinox. I love my 993 and
exactly
up the roads around here, and I love the sound that it makes.
Sure,
you can't fake that.
Yeah, the soundtrack won't cut it. I love what Jay Leno said, don't ask us about electric vehicles. We're car enthusiasts. I mean, of course, there's certain reasons that we're going to say that we don't care for them. But is it true, you look at all these cars and the argument that people make nowadays is, well, all cars look the same, which is not entirely true. There's a lot of, I think you see that. But isn't it because basically everybody's trying to achieve the same goal, the same fuel efficiency, and they have to get the coefficient of drag and all the different things that they have to do. So they kind of invariably look alike.
Yeah, definitely aerodynamics are, as a contributor to fuel efficiency, is driving some of that. What I've had a conversation with Ed Welburn about, who is the former design director at GM,
sure,
is why aren't more electric car manufacturers taking advantage of the fact that you don't have these traditional connections? You don't have an engine with axles and a steering column going into the motor compartment. You can move all that stuff around now. I mean, and you can even have drive-by-wire, which I think the Cybertruck has. Right. So you don't have a traditional steering column. So these components that were all sort of forced to be in one location don't have to be in that location anymore, which would allow you to do all sorts of interesting things with car proportions.
Right.
Like, you don't have this front-wheel drive engine driving the long overhang that lots of front-wheel drive cars have. And so I just don't know why there hasn't been more innovation like that.
Sure.
To take advantage of this flexibility, which would, I think, maybe not get around entirely the aerodynamic issue, but would allow you to fundamentally change car proportions and create a new look. So maybe that's the next big thing.
Well, and maybe the cars that we used to see as concepts that were impractical because of whatever reason now could be practical. You could have the goofy steering wheel that had the yoke and the weird things that we used to see, because I never thought about it that way. That's interesting that you could do it differently. And don't you know, all the guys that manufacture things like power steering units and all that are going, oh crap, if we're not already out of business, it's not far behind, right?
Well, I think making these are long-term bets. These are bets that are made a decade in advance. And obviously they're dependent on consumer tastes, legislation, competitor trends, whatever. And, you've only got so many chips to play, and you've got to make sure you play them in the right place. And so I think, electric cars, I think the issue that I see in the trade press, but not so much in the public press, is what's going to happen to dealers. I mean, I have a 2-year lease on my Equinox. I mean, I'm not going to need new tires. I'm not going to need an oil change. I'm not going to need, any maintenance.
Right.
So what happens to the dealer then? Do they shrink down? Do they?
Well, their profit, their profit centers are mostly in service and finance now, right?
Exactly.
So, interesting to see. I mean, a standalone dealership that has no other rooftops is in trouble. I mean, they've been in trouble for a long time, but. What are you going to do about it? I didn't mean this to become the all-electric show, but one last question. So why can't we invent, this will be like a kid asking his teacher a stupid question. Why can't we invent some kind of friction thing where when we're rolling down the highway, it's charging the batteries?
Well, that would mean you would have no energy to drive the car, but almost all the EVs have regenerative braking. Now, it won't recharge the battery, but it definitely provides an incremental element of charging.
Sure.
So, I think you're seeing what I'm so impressed in the electric car business is this multi-front battle on efficiency. That's battery storage. It's control technology.
Right.
There's probably as many software engineers working on an EV as there are mechanical engineers.
Right.
And developing this ability to control the vehicle so that it gets maximum efficiency. You're seeing things going on with weight reduction, battery cost, battery size, and I think it's fascinating. And I mean, yes, as an enthusiast, I'm a little disturbed, I guess, or frustrated by the growth of, that the ICE is fading away. But if you look on YouTube, there are plenty of kids who are going out and modifying Teslas to do just like we put 2 carbs on a car. I mean, they're it's just a different mentality.
Well, sure. And I think that, tinkering with cars isn't what it used to be when you come to stuff like that. But there's still, like you said, software. And that's what the kids love anyway, is dealing with computers and all that. So, I mean, I get it. It certainly seems interesting. I just hope that we have some version of ICE continuing until I'm long dead and gone.
Well, I think that I've certainly read, and maybe you have as well, that Chrysler is revisiting its decision to drop the Hemi. I've got to believe that those debates are happening in conference rooms everywhere. And it will depend a lot on what the new administration wants to prioritize. And that's probably not going to be fuel economy standards and rebates for EVs. So.
Sure. Well, we've got all this untapped oil, right? So we better use it. Otherwise, somebody else will get it. They'll figure out how to frack from here to Europe or whatever, vice versa, right?
You've been listening to the Classic Auto Mall Show with your host, Stewart Howden.